I'm Christina Woodlee. I'm excited to be back, so thanks for having me back. I was reminded the last time I came, which 2019 seems like a really long time ago, was 2019 when we had just opened Marlene's place. So I'm excited to be back. Thanks again for the invitation. So the Bridge for Youth, I think it's important that we ground ourselves in youth homelessness. In Minnesota, every night, 6,000 youth are experiencing homelessness. When you leave here today and you head to the grocery store, you head to the library, chances are you're going to come across a youth who's experiencing homelessness, and you're not even going to know it. Youth aren't standing on the freeway advertising that they're homeless. They're just walking amongst us. They're invisible. And so at the Bridge, we really are committed to empowering youth so that they feel visible and they feel empowered to make some choices. And why does that matter? Well, in the United States, 1.6 million youth every year experience homelessness. And those youth under the age of 24 are 50% of them. 80% of these youth have experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, or exploitation. 40% identify as LGBTQ+, and 35% are pregnant or parent. So that means a third of those youth under the age of 24 have a child with them or are expecting a child. Locally, in our very backyard, of the 6,000 youth every single night that are experiencing homelessness, 73% identify as BIPOC, they're youth of color, and 23% identify as LGBTQ+. I emphasize identify as. At the Bridge, we're an inclusive organization, so we pass no judgment, we make no assumptions. We ask youth what they identify as, and they select, and that's how we empower them when we speak to their truth. Annually, over 80% of the Bridge youth are BIPOC, and 20% identify as LGBTQ+. So amongst the youth here in the state of Minnesota, 35% are parents and their homes, and 26% of them have a child with them. That means they're sleeping on the streets, they're sleeping on a couch, they're exchanging activities for a safe place that's fine. They're doing things just to have some place to be and not be sleeping outside in these brutal, not so bad temperatures today, but in Minnesota, it gets pretty cold. Here in Hennepin County, 250 youth every single night are experiencing homelessness, and 65 of them have a killer. So why? Why are they homeless? The majority of them have had an adverse childhood experience. So they've been abused sexually, physically, emotionally, psychologically. They've witnessed abuse, domestic violence, acts of violence. Maybe there's substance abuse in the household. Maybe there's mental health challenges in the household. Maybe they have a parent that's in the correction system who got out. And the majority of those youth that are experiencing homelessness that have experienced an adverse childhood experience, their parents did as well. The newest research from the Voices of Youth showed that 36% of homeless adults themselves were homeless as children. So it's a cycle of intergenerational poverty and homelessness. In 1970, Sister Rita, Sister Marlene, the founders of the Bridge, Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, wanted to do something. Sadly, in 1970, there were over 6,000 homeless youth every night in Minnesota. That number hasn't changed. What's changed is how we talk about homelessness and the services and programs that are available for youth today. Sister Marlene, at the opening of the Bridge for Youth, this is what she said, and this is what grounds us. Homeless youth are us. They're the same family, same human family. They want someone to respect them, love them, to be concerned about them, someone that cares if they get up in the morning. They're just one of us. So in 1970, Sister Rita, Sister Marlene decided to do something. They literally opened up their church and they let youth from the community come in and sleep in the church. And it was incredible, but the need was beyond what they could imagine. And they couldn't meet the need and they couldn't keep the space. And so they were gifted by the congregation this pretty white house that's in the West Bank. That was our very, very first location. We were there until 1975 when we moved from the West Bank to Uptown, Minnesota, Minneapolis,
where we've been at the corner of 22nd and Emerson. If you've been over to the Lowry and you've had to look for parking, chances are you parked in front of our building. We have the big white house that's on the corner, and then we have the big brick building right next to it. So over the last 50 years, our programs have grown. We still have that big white house. It's core to who we are, and today it's home to 12 youth. So the Bridge for Youth this past year, we just finished strategic planning, and I'm excited to share, we have a new mission statement. We took intentionality and engaged the community, youth, community partners, funders, community experts, revisited our history, met with former youth, former staff, and today we've reintroduced our mission as, our mission is we center youth voice, justice, and equity in all we do, and we empower youth experiencing homelessness through safe shelter, basic needs, and healthy relationships. Our vision is all youth feel safe, accepted, and supported. But we're more than just an emergency shelter. Yes, that's how we started it, but we've had to evolve. So today we have a 24/7 crisis call and text for helpline. That means any youth, family, supportive adult anywhere in the country can call any hour of the day, text any hour of the day, and there's going to be a supportive voice on the other end of the phone, giving them some resources, maybe doing some conflict resolution to keep them home, maybe identifying someplace safe they can go, but somebody that's just going to be supportive. Our Resilience House is our emergency shelter. It is the largest emergency shelter in Heineken County for minor age youth. We don't require anything. We just ask you to be 10 to 17, and we will take care of the rest. That's unique because there are other shelter programs around the Twin Cities, and you have to have a referral to get in. No, we don't. When a youth arrives at the Bridge, we ask them 3 basic questions. First, we say hi. Then we say, my name is Christina, what's yours? What's your preferred name? What are your preferred pronouns? Why do we do that? Because 40% of homeless youth are identified as LGBTQ+ and are experiencing homelessness. Chances are 9 times out of 10, if they identify as LGBTQ+ and they're at the Bridge because they were told not to come home. So when they arrive, we ask that question at the very, very beginning so they know they are safe to be them, and then we're going to work together to figure out what comes next. So Resilience House is our emergency shelter for 10 to 17. While in the program, they're there for up to 90 days. We're licensed by the state of Minnesota, so that means we just don't have kids there. We're engaging the entire family. Within 5 days of being at the Bridge, we're contacting their legal guardians. I can see some parents in this room, and if your kid doesn't come home at the end of the day, you're probably panicking. Well, we're going to wait until the panic wears off with the child because we don't want them to run by calling mom and dad right away. They ran to the Bridge, so we're going to keep them safe. And when the time is right, together with the youth, if it is safe, we're going to call the legal guardian and let them know. I emphasize safe because if a youth arrives and they've experienced victimization, violence, exploitation, or any type of abuse or neglect, we're going to contact the proper authorities and report it. And we're going to follow their lead before we contact legal guardian. So we engage the family and we start the process of what comes next. So while they're in Resilience House, it's a program of productivity. They're not laying on the couch watching the Olympics, though I know some of them are today, in school, but they're engaged in school, so we connect them to transportation so they can go to school. They're working with their case manager. They're going to have a healthcare assessment to make sure that their healthcare needs have been met, or if not, we're going to connect them to a healthcare provider to have those needs met. They're going to meet with our mental health team, where we're going to start to unravel what brought them to the Bridge and what we can do to help fill their toolbox with some new tools. When the time is right, our mental health therapist team will engage the family, and we'll do some family counseling and conflict resolution, communication. When the youth arrive at the Bridge, we're not Disneyland. They are not happy. For any of you that have had a really bad day, it's a bad day on steroids. I mean, it's out of this world right now they're experiencing. So it's not uncommon a youth arrives at the Bridge and there's a colorful word that begins with the letter F. And you know what? We celebrate that word when we hear them saying, because they're communicating. They're not shut down and they're engaged. And very slowly, over the course of 3 to 5 days, that letter suddenly changes and begins with the letter L, love. They learn to love themselves, to hold their head up and that they matter and that their voice and their choice is what's coming next. So we watch it. The work is really gritty, but it's also really beautiful. And youth are just youth. They're confused as they are, but now they can't go home, and we just are there to offer of support. About 3 years ago, I sat up here and I said, guess what? We opened a new program, Marlene's Place. I'm excited to say Marlene's Place is our transitional living program for pregnant and parenting youth. That means we have youth ages 16 to 20 that come to the bridge. Family reunification isn't safe, it isn't possible. There may not be any other supportive adults. There is nowhere else for them to go. It is not illegal to be homeless with a child. So often parenting youth don't lose their children because they don't have a home. They lose their children because of things like failure to thrive. Maybe they didn't get them to the doctor and they're not making their baby well checks. Maybe they're not able to provide food or clothing. Shelter is necessary, but it's not legally required to be a parent. And so often what happens is parenting youth, they're homeless. They're making it work, but they're not able to provide that stability. And there is no shortage of homes for cute little babies to go to, but not a whole lot of options for a mom and her baby to go to under the age of 18. So in 2018, we looked at our data and what we saw is we had families coming into the bridge. And what we were having to do is we were contacting child protection because the majority of those youth had been sexually exploited or trafficked or victimized. So they were victims, the conception story wasn't positive, and now they had a child. Immediately, that mother and that child were involved in a system and they were broken apart. As an organization whose core value is family reunification when safe and possible, we weren't upholding our mission. Instead, we were perpetuating a cycle of long-term chronic homelessness. So we opened Marlene's Place, and it's still open. Today, it's home to 5 young families ages 16 to 20. They can stay up to about 2 years. It's for unaccompanied youth, so it's a mom or a dad and their child. 0 to 3. Now, why 16 to 20? Why 0 to 3? Because teenagers and kiddos develop socially, emotionally, developmentally different. So we wanted to have like-minded ages because the impact of trauma is significant. So we wanted to have some commonalities. If you're a grandparent or you've been a parent, you know from 0 to 3 a lot happens. And there's a big difference from a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And we had to really kind of hone in on what we could do. So we opened Marlene's Place, the first and only site-based transitional living program here in Heineken County for pregnant and parenting. While they're there, they're engaged in comprehensive case management. So they're going to school. And yes, our moms go to school. Dads can come too, but so far since the program opened, we've only had single moms come in. And so we're connecting them to school. They're going to school, their kiddos are in childcare or daycare. It's actually kind of cute in the morning when the school bus arrives. Mom gets on the bus and baby gets on the bus. They go to school and then they come home after school. And they're both equally exhausted. They both want a nap and a snack. And then they want to chill. And so we see it with both parent and child. So they're going to engage in that case management that's going to connect them to supportive adults. It may be family. It may be aunt, uncle, extended family, best friend. But we're really going to try to connect them to some supportive adults if they identify as supportive so that their support system is outside of the bridge. On-site healthcare. So healthcare includes physical, oral, and mental health. We have a nurse on staff 4 days a week doing the basic healthcare assessments, the basic checks. We're not prescribing a prescription for like pink eye or for a stomachache. Instead, we're making a referral so they can actually go to a clinic because we want to have a healthcare provider. But we're able to give those young moms, if you've had a fussy baby at night, like, hey, this is normal, or this is a fever, we're able to give that healthcare lens and kind of give them some stability there. Our mental health team is there, so they're doing that individual and group and family counseling because we want to also help them recover from their trauma. Unlike the youth in our Resilience House shelter, the attachment is different. So in Resilience House, these are youth, for whatever reason, they can't go home. In Marlene's Place, this is a mom and her child. The child is often the result of a conception story that was not positive. So the attachment is very different. So we're working to restore the attachment between the parent and the child. We were beyond our scope when we opened Marlene's Place. We knew it was new for us. We knew there was a need in the community and we had to do something. And in opening Marlene's Place, we created an unanticipated consequence that today is a really beautiful thing. It led to Gloria's Place. So what happened is when we opened Marlene's Place, we had 5 units. And 2 weeks before the program opened, we had 150 youth on that waiting list for 5 units. How do you pick? I mean, We had to prioritize. And they stay 12 months, so it's not like we can have all 150 in there because they can stay 12 to 18 months typically. So we picked 5 youth. And the rest of the youth, we had nowhere to send them. So we were turning youth away and the calls kept coming in. We have Resilience House, which is our emergency shelter, but not for parenting youth. So if they were pregnant, we could put them in Resilience House, which gave some short-term stability, but not really long-term. So the beauty that came out of our unintended consequence of opening Marlene's Place was Gloria's Place. Gloria's Place today is the only emergency shelter in Hennepin County for pregnant and parenting youth. It's for youth ages 15 to 17, so a little bit younger. We're still focusing on family reunification when it's safe and when it's possible. And we're also really empowering those youth to figure out what is long-term housing stability look like. Now, the difference, what we're seeing in Marlene's Place and Gloria's Place, is similar audience. Marlene's Place, they're typically entering the program and they've had a child. Gloria's Place, we're seeing they're coming in right before they give birth. They want to get stabilized, they want to feel supported. And for a young mom who recently said, I just want somebody in the delivery room with me. I don't want to do this alone. And so they're coming in a week or two before they're going to give birth. The majority of them haven't had the prenatal care. So we're doing the prenatal care and connecting them to healthcare, finding an OB, finding a hospital, doing all that stuff that some of us had 9 months to prepare for. We're doing really, really quick because your due date is your due date, but those babies, they come fast and they often come early. So we're moving really, really fast to connect them so that they're ready when that baby comes. When the baby is born, 9 times out of 10, they're healthy and they come back, mom and baby. And again, they're in a supportive environment where they can physically start to yell and they're supported by staff. They have a little bit of time to breathe. Again, it's 90 days. So a little bit of time to breathe, but enough to kind of figure out, okay, this is what it means to be a parent. And this is the supports that I need. And oh my gosh, I am a parent, but I think I can do this. Because I think we all have that moment. But we also, most of us have houses to go home to. So they find a community that they embrace. For our unaccompanied youth in our emergency shelter, there's a magic number, 18. When you turn 18, the world is your oyster, right? You can do everything. You can vote, you can join the military. You're all grown up. And I have an 11-year-old at home and he reminded me recently, when I turn 18, well, when you turn 18, dude, you go for it. But you know what? For our youth that are 17 in our Resilience House, when they turn 18, it's scary. Because at 18, you enter the adult homelessness system. And it is different. It is meant to, you reserve your bed in the morning. You check out. You don't keep your stuff. In some of them, and we need them, you have a cot on the floor. At the bridge, they're in a room. They're in a bed. They have a warm shower. They have 3 warm meals. They're being supported. They have somebody saying, hey, where do you want to go to school? What do you want to do? They're not being forced to do anything. They're making choices. But at 18, it's a different need and it's a different community. And what we were seeing is our youth that were doing really stable. As they turned 17, they were stabilized. Maybe they were going to school. Maybe they were getting ready to graduate. Something happened that perpetuated their housing instability and they found themselves in an adult shelter system. And the majority of them found themselves in systems. So they were becoming involved in corrections. 80% of our youth annually identify as BIPOC. Young BIPOC men under the age of 24 are the fastest growing population in corrections. And we were seeing our youth that when they left the bridge with dreams of graduation and some wanting to join the military or start a family or be a teacher, suddenly we're ending up in correction system because they engaged in an activity for survival and we had big growth from them. And so we had to do something about it. So the big white house that we have in the corner that for many, many years was our emergency shelter, we opened as Rita's house. Now in Rita's house, we had 12 youth, ages 18 to 22. At the time, before we opened Rita's house, it was a 5-bedroom house. 5 bedroom, 3 bathrooms, 1 kitchen. Today it's a 12-bedroom house, still has 3 bathrooms, still has 1 kitchen, and it's got 12 youth. We partner with Common Bond Communities who, in partnership, the youth are signing a lease and they're building rental and credit history. They're working with our case management, so they're engaged in things like paying their rent on time. You gotta have a job. Where are you gonna work? Or are you gonna go to school? Is it trade school? Is it secondary school? What about independent living skills? Opening a checking account, learning how to save, learning how to grocery shop, learning how to navigate public transportation. Again, that magic number 18, suddenly you're a grown-up, but if you don't have a supportive adult who can ask for help, you kind of flounder your way through. So in Rita's house, they're supported by their case manager, but they're also supported by each other. And 12 youth, 3 bathrooms. They're learning communication. They're learning conflict resolution. They're learning what it means to time manage. They're learning to share. And they're learning how to engage constructively in a community setting so that when they are ready to leave Rita's house, they're able to engage in the community. So all of our programs are supported by our individual family and group counseling. We have groups every single day. We have therapists and 2 licensed mental health professionals on staff available to meet with youth, families, now staff as well, while in program and then even after they leave the program. It's our goal that for a youth and a family in any of our programs is one and done. We know we're not going to fix it, but we want to build that supportive adult relationship with our therapist team, that if something starts to go a little off course, they can reach out and we can avoid an episode of homelessness if we can. Knowing that it's safe if they need to come back, but really let's make sure that we're empowering you so you don't have to come back. And where do we find these youth? So 6,000 homeless youth, if they're not on the freeway and they're not advertising, hey, I'm homeless, I can't go home, where do we find them? Well, we have a really phenomenal outreach team. So they are out riding the trains, the buses, they're in the libraries, they're in the parks. They're just walking around, talking to youth, meeting with schools, street site, and now mobile outreach, knowing where the youth are at. I mean, we are the bridge for youth, so we can ask youth, where were you? And we have a youth board that tells us where we should be. So we hear the youth and then we respond and we simply show up. I want to pause and actually introduce you to one of our youth. I think it's really wonderful when staff and myself have the opportunity to come and talk about our organization. And I've been in fundraising for over 20 years. I was schooled pretty well. You always say the greatest things about your organization. And if you make them cry, you did a really good job. I promise you I'm not going to make you cry. But personally, as wonderful as I think the bridge is, our youth, you should hear from them. So I'd like to take this chance to introduce you to Zeke.
It's speeches, but here we go. Bridge reads, what is it and why should anyone care? Well, the bridge for you is somewhere kids can come to be themselves and not be afraid of judgment. It's a place where people of all walks of life come together to build their communities and themselves. Staff at the bridge work hard to make sure that everyone feels welcome and respected. They make sure that each kid has somewhere to stay and someone to take. For me, I think the bridge to be a space where you simply speak. Judgment, no need of walls, so much let go and relax. I started coming to the bridge in 7th grade. That was 5 years ago. I'm 18 and graduated from high school now. I came to the bridge with a support group called So What If I? I remember my first day at that group. I was terrified to go into a room full of people who I didn't know. What if they thought I was weird or didn't like me? But I remember I walked into that group, as I opened the door, all the other kids turned to say hi and they welcomed me. And it was that simple action of everyone taking the time to acknowledge me that made me want to be a part of So What. And it made me want to become a more active part of the bridge youth. Over my schooling career, I've continued to lean on the bridge for youth, both emotionally and financially. A couple of months ago, my mom and I decided to rent an apartment together. And for any of you who have not had the pleasure of moving and buying household items, let me tell you something. It is so expensive. Why are couches like $10,000? Why? Anyway, when I moved, I reached out to the bridge youth and asked if they had anything that could help me. And they did. They got me connected with one of their partner organizations, gender, sex can talk and be heard. Somewhere that treats everyone with kindness and respect. The Bridge Youth has many, many different roles. It's a safe space. It's well, a bridge between a world where youth have to struggle alone for what they need, and a world where we can all work together to create a more beautiful tomorrow. Today, I still go to So What If I Am. I love getting to see the faces show up, realize that they have found a safe space. 50 years ago, I also became a part of the advisory board, where I'm able to advise the Bridge on how to best serve youth in need. It's a really interesting job, and it lets me make sure that the Bridge will always be a safe space. Correct?
So that was Zeke. They're a pretty special person. And we're pretty fortunate that we have pretty phenomenal youth like Zeke. I've been at the Bridge for years, and I can honestly say they're pretty amazing. The first day Zeke arrived, I thought she thought I was an alien. She didn't want anything to do with me, and now they're working, they're going to school. They're going for a degree in animal science because they want to be a veterinarian. So it's pretty. So Zeke's pretty special. All of our youth are pretty special. They arrive at the Bridge and we don't know what's going to happen. We're not their biggest supporters at the beginning because they're not our big supporters either. They just want someplace to be. And so we get to know them. But annually, last year, we had almost 2,000 crisis calls and texts we responded to. We had almost 300 youth in our emergency shelter. Of those almost 300 youth, 81% went to safe and stable housing. We had 18 young families in our Marlene's Place program, 14 youth in our Rita's house. And over 80% of those youth also went to safe and stable housing after they left the Bridge. Almost 1,200 youth engaged in the community through our outreach activities. And then with our mental health team, 300 youth. But we're not done. For 50 years, our programs have evolved. Started as an emergency shelter, then we had a text line, then we had a teen parenting program, then we had an emergency shelter, then we bought a bus, and now we have mobile outreach where we're driving around the community in a big white bus that's really colorful. And actually, COVID-19 was really difficult for all of us, but for the youth, I would be remiss if I didn't say connection. Y'all have a cell phone. Y'all probably have Wi-Fi. When the world shut down for the youth. 9 times out of 10 youth arrive at the Bridge and they have their cell phone, but they don't have Wi-Fi. They don't have data plans. So when the world shut down, so did public Wi-Fi. They couldn't find us. We knew they were out there. And literally when we were on lockdown, we couldn't find them. So we didn't know where to go. We asked our youth board, and we asked Zeke, and they said, show up, just show up. So our staff did. They filled their cars. They became mini offices, everything you could imagine. Food, clothing, everything. Blankets, tents, PPE of every shape, sizes, formula, diapers, everything. And we were showing up. It was getting to be really tolling on our staff because the challenge was we didn't know which youth we were going to see depending on which site we showed up at. So we literally bought a bus. And today we have the Youth Mobile Outreach Center. It's a big metro mobility bus that's been transformed, youth designed, youth led, and inside is a hotspot so youth can connect to the internet. We knew if we were able to connect with them, then maybe we'd be able to get them to come on the bus and connect a little further. So to get on the Wi-Fi, they have to come on the bus to get the password. Then we're able to say, hey, what's going on? Do you need something to eat? Do you need something to wear? And have a conversation. It takes us 3 to 5 engagements with the youth before we build their trust, before they tell us, hey, I can't go home, or it's not safe to go home. So often we see them 3 or 4 times on the bus, and then we're able to get them into the shelter program. It was eye-opening for us because we had to show up, but we also knew we had to do more. We were fortunate that in May of 2020, we had a leadership transition, and with that, we took the opportunity to engage in strategic planning. So throughout 2021, we had collective conversations with community and collaboration, and in 2022, We are now embarked on our 2022-2024 strategic framework. As we look ahead, we're going to really leverage our core competencies. And core is youth. But given the youth and families we have the opportunity to walk alongside with, racial justice and equity is centered in all that we do. We're prioritizing on minor age youth. We heard from youth and from community when they thought of a safe place for youth and minor youth, they thought of the bridge. So we're scaling back. We're focusing on the under 18. Not because the over 18 don't matter, but there's a lot of programs for those over the age of 18 and not very many for those under 18. Really honing in on youth who identify as BIPOC and LGBTQ+. So what this means is that our staff and our board and our leadership are reflective of the youth and families we serve. In our parenting programs, we listened. And when we had great healthcare, they wanted healthcare that looked like them. So we're establishing culturally specific birthing support, whether it's doula, whether it's child well-being. We're establishing new relationships with community to reflect our community of the bridge. And given the great need and disparity in our community, pregnant parenting youth. As we look ahead to the future, this is our expansion. It's youth who are pregnant and parenting. We reaffirmed our vision goal is to be an exemplary, the best organization in the nation. You know, back in 1971, Sister Rita, Sister Marlene testified before Congress. Their testimony resulted in the RHY Act. In 1971, when we had youth coming to the bridge, it was illegal. They were runaways. They could be picked up and arrested. It was illegal to be a runaway. It wasn't until legislation in 71 and again expanded in 72 that suddenly with consent you would have to comply. And so we want to be that national organization and to push the envelope. All our programs are going to be holistic, inclusive, and journey-oriented. We're going to meet youth where they're at. We're going to recognize it's a journey. Every step is a step. As long as we're moving, we're making a step in the right direction. And we're really going to hone in on youth voice. Youth voice and leadership is a catalyst for change. So we're going to listen to Zeke. We're going to listen to Jacoby. We're going to listen to our youth. And we're going to amplify that voice, and we're going to use everything we can to make sure that they are heard and that they are not invisible in our community, because for far too long they have been. And so that is the bridge for youth. We dream, we inspire, we hope. These are our youth. And we couldn't be here without community support. So appreciate the opportunity to come here. Hopefully you're like, wow, I didn't know there was this problem in our community. I hope you don't walk out and feel sorry for our youth, because you know what, they are pretty phenomenal. And the courage and the resiliency that they have, it's beautiful. So while they're at the bridge, we're going to give them a hand up, not a hand out. And we're going to say, what do you want to do? And we're going to start with those very first three questions. What's your name? What's your preferred name? And what do you want to do? And based on that, we're going to open the door and let them take the first step, providing that support along the way. Any questions?